on Senate Bill 269. Amelia, will you give us an overview?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill number 269 relates to the State Board of Tax Appeals and would prohibit a filing fee when a previous appeal remains pending before the board. KSA 74-2438A provides in part that the Executive Director of the Board of Tax Appeals shall charge and collect a filing fee to recover all or part of the costs of processing actions, except as provided in subsection E. And subsection E then has a list of certain situations where a filing fee shall not be charged. And this bill would amend subsection E1 to provide that no filing fee shall be charged to a taxpayer who has filed an appeal for a previous year that has not been decided by the board and is still pending before the board at the time another appeal is filed. And that would change the language that is currently in that paragraph that provides that the appeal has to be beyond the time period prescribed by KSA 74-2426. And as a reminder for all of you, that particular section, that particular statute, to be beyond that time period, that is the 14 days after an appeal is fully submitted to the board. The board has 14 days to issue a summary decision. And if a full and complete opinion is requested, the board has 90 days to issue its full and complete opinion. So the current language requires that the case already, the previous appeal already be heard or have a hearing, and that the board be beyond those 14 days or 90 days of a decision. The amendment provided here would remove that language and instead provide that no filing fee would be charged if there was a previous appeal that is just still pending before the Board of Tax Appeals. So it could be something that is not scheduled for hearing yet. And I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. I know that's a little confusing, but basically it boils down to that they file a fee, and if the hearing didn't occur, then they have to pay the fee again. And so this is just saying that you would file the fee and you do not owe that fee until the hearing's heard. Is that summarizing somewhat?
Yes. The process is that each tax year is a new appeal. So each time, unless an exception applies, each time an appeal, such as an equalization appeal, the spring appeal, or a payment under protest, each tax year is another appeal with another filing fee.
Thank you. Thank you. Any questions, committee? Seeing none, thank you, Amelia. Committee, Eric Stafford, welcome.
Thank you, Madam Chair and members of the committee. Good morning. I'm Eric Stafford with the Kansas Chamber, here in support of Senate Bill 269. This is probably one of the least complex tax issues that we've had to testify on, and I think the reviser did a really good job, and I don't know if there's any more that we can add substantively, other than just to say it seems to be fair for the taxpayer that if you've already paid to file an appeal and that appeal has not yet been addressed, and you might go into another tax year and again have another appeal if you have one before you that has not yet been decided on the same property, that the filing fee be waived. So really, it's honestly that simple. So I'm happy to answer any questions that you might have, but this is a good pro-taxpayer piece of legislation that really isn't that complex.
Any questions? Seeing none, thank you, Eric.
Yeah, thank you, appreciate it.
Yeah, committee, we, just to give you a little background on this legislation, there was a group of us, like I mentioned, that we met over the summer and the fall and brainstormed on property taxes and how to improve the system. And this is one of the items that was a result of that. People were having to pay the fee and they weren't being heard. And then they would have to come back and pay another fee in order to keep the case in front of BOTA. So this just makes sense that you file the fee once and you're one and done, basically. Are there any other proponents? Any opponents to 269? Any neutral testimony? Seeing none, we'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 269 and open the hearing on Senate Bill 233, or 223, sorry. Thank you. Amelia, will you give us an overview?
Madam Chair, members of the committee, Senate Bill number 223 relates to sales and compensating use tax and would provide countywide retailer sales tax authority for Russell County. Specifically, the bill would provide Russell County the authority to submit a proposition to its electors to impose a countywide retailer sales tax of up to 1% and pledging the revenue received therefrom for the purpose of financing the costs of construction, remodeling, capital improvements, or maintenance of attendance centers or other district facilities of any school district or school districts within the county. The tax imposed would expire upon payment of all costs authorized in financing the cost of those facilities for USD number 407. And the revenues generated by the imposition of this tax would entirely be retained by the county and expended only for the purposes the revenue was pledged. And the bill would take effect from and after publication in the statute book. And I'd be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Amelia. Committee, any questions? So Amelia, this would be a unique circumstance, the second time in statute that sales tax would be used for USD for schools.
As I recall, last year's amendment for, I believe, Rawlins County and USD 105 was the, at least in my recollection, I haven't actually gone through all of history, but that was the most recent similar provision.
And that was a result of a fire, an emergency situation, is that correct? That's fine, we'll wait and hear from the conferees, but I just wanted to, I remember doing that last year and I couldn't remember exactly why. Oh, Eddie?
I was just going to clarify the second time a countywide sales tax was applicable for schools. There may be city instances. In fact, the Supreme Court has specifically indicated that city sales taxes can be used for school purposes if the city makes a finding as such, that it's appropriate for the city.
Wonderful, thank you. Nice to know. Thank you, Amelia. Jason Krug, welcome to the Tax Committee.
Thank you, Chairperson Tyson and Vice Chair Senator Peck, the rest of the committee members for hearing us today. I'm Jason Krug, Russell County Commissioner, District Number 2. USD 407 approached Russell County Commissioners regarding the countywide sales tax to be put on a ballot. I'm asking you today to give us that opportunity. Our school district put together a steering committee that has been working on school facility upgrades or possibly new schools for over a year now. From the input they received from the community of Russell, the only way that we can pass a bond in Russell County is if a sales tax is part of the equation. I know that you spend a lot of time every year in the last several years dealing with property taxes, and we're dealing with the same thing at the commission level in Russell. I know this was done before in Atwood, Kansas, albeit under different circumstances, but Russell, USD 407 is sitting at a crossroads. Right now we have families leaving for larger school districts because of the quality of the facilities that we have. We're losing tax base because of that. We're trying to turn things around. The last bond that was passed in Russell County for USD 407 was in 1959. Our past Board of Education have done a great job putting Band-Aids on the problems, but really haven't addressed what needed to be addressed over the years. The schools are in dire need of repairs or replacement. With the ever-increasing costs and ability to keep up with the needs of facilities, it's become almost impossible for our school board. From a county commissioner perspective, things are not easy as well. As you may know, Russell County is one of the top 5 oil-producing counties in the state. Our largest producers in Russell County have said that over the last 10 years, our oil production has gone down 3 to 5% and will continue to do that. So we're actually sitting on a finite resources when it comes to oil. One of our townships in Russell County is going to take a $450,000 hit this year because of decreased valuations. And as a county commissioner, we still have obligations to meet for the citizens of Russell County. Currently, our 2% tax rate that we have in Russell County, 1.5% goes to economic development, 1.5% goes to the hospital, 1.5% stays with the county, and the other 0.5% is divided among the cities in the county. Our only way to make this happen is to sharpen our pencils and possibly raise property taxes, which is what we're trying to avoid. But giving us the opportunity to vote on a countywide sales tax would provide an economic spark for the county. There are 4 school districts in Russell County, which makes this unique. Each district, although, would get a portion of this tax, benefiting each community. 3 things are key for Russell to survive: a good hospital, a good grocery store, and good schools. Right now, I think we have a great hospital and a great grocery store, and we're really trying to have great schools. Having an updated school investing in other communities would have a positive impact on our local economy. The Scroll School District is a major driver of property values. Family with children prioritize good schools when they're moving to communities. Their absence would significantly reduce the demand for housing. The decline would impact everyone, just not those with children. Homeowners would lose equity, and the overall tax base would shrink. Less families would hinder future residential development and stifle the growth and potential for new businesses and services. All these things are tied would lead to declining property values, which would lead to a significant drop in property tax and sales tax revenue. Schools are the heart of small communities, especially Russell, serving as gathering places and sources of pride. The possibility of losing a school can erode community cohesion and identity. In essence, losing a school isn't just about education, it's about the entire economic and social fabric of our community. It would create a domino effect leading to declining property values, workforce shortages, business closures, and a shrinking tax base. What I'm asking you today is to let the citizens of Russell County have the opportunity to vote on this issue for themselves. Thank you, and I'll stand for questions.
Thank you. Any questions, committee? Seeing none. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Mandy Trout. Welcome to the Tax Committee.
I want to start off by saying we're very grateful to Senator Bowers for introducing Senate Bill 223 for the Russell County. I would also like to extend a thank you to the Taxation and Allocation Committee for hearing our testimony today. I did send, you should all have a handout, and it's got some graphs and things that I will be referring to. I am Mandy Trout, and I am a co-chair of the Russell Steering Committee. My role is to guide a group of community members to develop a plan of improvement for the educational facilities of USD 407. I am also a product of USD 407. I was a 1993 graduate of Lucas Luray High School. And if we know anything about the county of Russell, up in the top right-hand corner shows what the different districts are. If you look at where 399, 299, and 407 meet, that's where I grew up. My family's farm is right out there. So I attended the schools of USD 407. I understand declining enrollment. I understand deteriorating facilities, and because of the closing of the Lucas Luray schools, I also know what it means to a community to lose their school. Beyond that, as you might tell from my handout, I was a 24-year teacher at Russell High School. So my boys actually grew up in the buildings of USD 407. We have 4 boys, 25 to 12, that attended and are attending the Russell County schools at this time. So 2 of them have graduated, went all the way through K through 12. Now, we as a group that have come to speak with you today because there are some things that we are troubled with within our school district that we're trying to find a feasible and sustainable solution to. Our town is located at the intersection of two major highways. So the opportunities that we can have at our school system is great, but our facilities are falling apart. Some of the challenges that we are facing have to do with the infrastructure. Being in the high school for 24 years, I can tell you that not having an air conditioner when it's 100 degrees outside is extremely difficult to educate high school kids. They don't like to be there some days to begin with. Well, when it's really hot, it makes it even harder. And imagine trying to find the parts for a 62-year-old piece of equipment that you need to keep running. We have boilers where we have 2 out of 3 of those boilers work, but in order to make them continue to work, we can't find parts for some of them, and some of them they actually had to create the parts that were necessary to get it back up and running. Also, I have a son at Bickerdike, and when you walk into Bickerdike, it's a 3-level school. You have to walk down to the cafeteria, you have to walk up 1 level to get to the office, and then another area to get to some of the classrooms. There is a chairlift when you walk straight into right into those front doors, but in order to go from the bottom level to the top level, it takes 13 minutes if we have a student that cannot walk those steps. And some of these things go through the other schools as well. The high school was one of them. We had a young man that had broken his leg really bad, and he was in music. Well, our music is down 2 flights of stairs. So he was not able to go there for a couple weeks in order to, because he couldn't make the stairs to go down there, and he was a very big boy, so his friends weren't gonna carry him either. So that's how that one, all those things kind of come into play there. We have issues with storm shelters. At the high school, we have a storm shelter that once you walk into it, it's kind of a cave, and along the top of it is a bunch of electrical work, and then right under that is the water pipes, and I'm stuck in there with other teachers and about 75 other students thinking, boy, I sure hope those water pipes don't break, and I hope it doesn't hit the electricity, because we're gonna have some trouble here and trying to get out of there. So that's the kind of things that we're looking at the schools that we're dealing with. And within the infrastructure, our electrical needs to be updated, and there is a very large cost at that. We want to maintain good technology within our schools, but in order to have that technology, that takes electricity, which then is not being able to be taken care of by the load that our electrical units can handle. Also, developing new programs for the students. Those are all things that we have to take into consideration as with the electrical, whether or not it can handle it. And we're trying to put more CTE into the schools, and that's career technical education. And that's one thing that we've tried to be a forefront with, having a welding class that we're trying to put in. But again, everything had to be remodeled in order to do that. And then we also have quite a few of the students that will get a certificate for CNA, and they're able to then go to the hospital and get a job there after school. And that's been a very, very good thing for our schools. With all of those things put together, we are looking at what do we need and not what do we want. With just the needs of our school, we are looking at $30 million of improvements. And that's why when we started working with different community members and talking about what it is that we need in our schools, that's why the price tag needs to allow for a 1% or up to a 1% county tax if the voters and the taxpayers would allow that to be. If you look at the bottom of the page, there's a cost comparison between a 1% county tax and a 1% city tax. What that would look like for a homeowner or a commercial property with a $100,000 value, which as we know in today's market is not that high. Or if we look at the dry crop ground that we have. This all adjusts into the mill levy, and with the 1% county tax added onto it, if allowed to vote on it, we are cutting the mill levy in half. And we didn't come up with our numbers just very haphazardly. We have a committee called the Steering Committee that has gone out and did a lot of research to come up with the numbers that we've got. And for the county tax for 2024 that was collected, we were looking at a number of about 2.2 million. But then if we look at just the city tax, then we're looking at just a little over 450,000. And you can see with 4 times more to be able to work with and allocate, that makes a very big difference when it comes to an educational system and what we are allowed to do with those dollars. Also, in 2019, we did have another steering committee that formed together and put out a bond issue for, in April, it was a $19.9 million bond issue, failed by 60%. In November, there was a $9.9 million bond issue, failed by 60%. Their biggest problem with those bond issues, they didn't talk to the community. The community didn't have any input into what they were doing. So when we started our committee this time, that was our main goal. We were gonna get advice from the community. We're gonna go out to the community and talk about, what it is that we're seeing. And every single facility was visited. These are the needs of each one of our schools. And this is why we have to close down. We have one attendance center, it's our middle school, beautiful building, but in order to maintain that, you're talking about another $11 million to bring that up. And we had to go through and make some changes and talk about it, but once you made those communications with the community, they got a little bit more understanding out of what it was that we're looking at and why we have such big difficulties. So by approaching them and gathering all the data that we have, we were able to kind of talk about what the numbers are. And that's where that 30 million, and that's just bare minimum what it's gonna take to just update and bring our facilities to working order to where it's not gonna keep sucking money out of the budget. If you look at the second page, it's got, works with the property for homeowners, commercial properties, and also ag land. In order to come up with some numbers, we wanted to know what the impact was going to be on our community members. And one of the big ones that you always have to watch out for are the commercial property owners. So if we were looking at the homeowner properties, it shows you the difference between if we went with a $40 million bond or a $20 million bond, what those numbers would do. What's feasible, what's sustainable. And if we look at those, we're going to be able to do 40 million and be able to have some numbers that don't skyrocket like some of the other ones do. It cuts those taxes in half that we're going to be asking from the property taxes in terms of homeowners. And to collect that data, what happened was we went to the appraiser's office and took 67 of the homes that were along the street just to get a good variation of all those numbers and came up with what is it going to look like for them. So everybody can kind of take a look where they're at on that scale and say, yeah, that's about what we pay in our property taxes, and then know what's going to happen with it after that. Same thing we did with the commercial. We looked at 35 different businesses and came up with, well, what's the property tax look like? What does the median value of that place look like? And then what is that going to do to their taxes? And then again, we also looked at that in terms of the ag ground. I told you I grew up in that little intersection up there on a farm. Well, now I have a 25-year-old that drives out there every day and works with grandpa on that farm. And so anytime we make these numbers and make these decisions, we're doing this for our children, we're doing this for our grandchildren. So that's something that we definitely want to pay attention to, and we're not going to take it just take it lightly, and we're just not asking for something that we're not going to try to do correctly, use it correctly, and maintain. So everything that we've asked for and everything that we've gone forward with, we are looking at and have been very decisive about looking at the numbers, looking at the data, and what those are going to look like moving forward. And if it's something that our community as a whole, number one, wants to do, number two, thinks they can sustain down the road, and not just set something up now and then worry about it again later. This is something we want to make sure that everything is done right, and that's why we're here today, to give our taxpayers the opportunity to improve our schools in a much better way than we could just on our own. So with that, the community that exists within the boundaries of Russell County, Thanks you for your time and consideration. It's no secret that our schools have been neglected for way too long. With your approval, we would like the opportunity to ask the voters of Russell County to increase their county sales tax to offset the impact of a bond issue that is not only past due, but it's going to be necessary. And based on the fact that this could be setting a precedence, well, it's okay for us to allow our county to set a precedence, because this is something that if we don't have our schools, we are a very nice town right at the crossroads of two major U.S. highways, and what would happen if we didn't have a school? And it should have been maintained more, but we can't look back and say shoulda, woulda, because that's what happened the last time, and that didn't happen to pass. Well, the community is now at a point where they're saying we have to do something. And as a committee, for the steering committee, we are trying to give them options, and we're trying to give the opportunity to be a part of that and to figure out what it is that's best for us. I would be happy to stand for questions.
Thank you, Mandy. I don't see any questions. I have a couple for you. I really appreciate your testimony. Yes, this is kind of a new precedent, so I'm curious as to how you guys came up with the idea of sales tax versus property tax.
When we were going through, well, when we were talking about having to work with having the bond issue and the property taxes and looking at what the discrepancy was between not having a countywide sales tax, we needed to find a way to cut that cost, because even if we cut what we need in half, that's still not going to cover the needs of our district. So talking to the people in the community, many of them, from what they had said, are going to be for it more, the bond issue, if we do have a countywide sales tax as opposed to the city. We do have some businesses along I-70 that are within the county that will add quite a bit of revenue to what we have for options rather than just a city tax.
Okay, and you show, is it 4 school districts in the county?
Yes.
So will each of those districts get a portion of the sales tax?
Yes, each one of them were contacted. The superintendent and the school board members did attend meetings with each one of the leaders of those school districts. And within those school districts, they were all on board with it. And what we're doing is we are taking the population of our Russell County students that attend those facilities in their school districts, and they are getting a percentage of that. And I think we ended up with 84, and then the other 16 is split up amongst the other three schools.
Okay, and this may be a question for the revisor, but with this sales tax, would a portion of it be required to go to the municipalities, or would it all go to the school districts?
Madam Chair, in this particular bill, the provision is that the entirety of the sales tax collected would go toward the county.
Okay, I just wanted to clarify. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Mandy.
Thank you.
Committee, we have several proponents, and is there anybody else that would like to testify as a proponent? Any opponents? Any neutral? Mandy made a comment about her representation, Senator Bowers. I would also reiterate, you have very strong representation for your community. Senator Bowers and Representative Waymaster, they work very hard for you guys, and so I appreciate their efforts. I'll close the hearing on Senate Bill 223. Committee, we have a couple of minutes. We have talked about Senate Bill 109 in the past. I know the Vice Chairman was working on some items on it. I don't think we're going to pick it up today. I just want to bring it to your attention for the future. But I will list Senate Bill 73, the dates, considering changing the date when property tax notices go out. Senate Bill 109 was the remittance. Senate Bill 215 was the property tax freeze for seniors and disabled veterans, and Senate Bill 269. I plan to work on those in the future. I just wanted to give the committee a heads up on them. So, Senator Ware. 269, and 215. 109? No, 73. Okay. Yes. So committee, we won't work anything that we heard today. We'll hold it over. Is there any other business to be brought before the committee? Seeing none, we're adjourned.